In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at how to create some headphones. The purpose of today's video would be to learn a little bit more about subdivision modeling. So, first of all, what actually is subdivision modeling? Whenever we create any sort of shape inside of Maya, we can always smooth it out, which means that we can add more geometry to that surface and we can see how it affects the model. For now, when we're going to be working today with this model, we are always going to be thinking to go as low polygon as possible. As we can see, whenever we press 3 on our keyboard, it gives us a preview of what the mesh would look like if it was smoothed out. You can see how it transforms a single cube into something a lot more round. This is basically the same thing as right-clicking on the model, shift right-clicking and smoothing it out. The only difference is that it doesn't actually smooth it out, but it just gives us a preview of how it would look like if we smoothed that object out. So for today, we're going to try and do as little as we can in polygons. So get as little topology as we can, and afterwards use the smooth mesh preview preset, or the 3 preset as we like to say it, and see how that would affect the subdivision modeling. So whenever we do subdivision modeling, we always have to keep in mind that the less topology that we have, the better our smooth preview will be. So the easier it is to manipulate it, the less edges you have and the less vertices you have, the easier your manipulation of those same vertices would be. So when we start to model out our prop, first of all, what we do is get all of the rough shapes in and click 3 to preview how they would look like when they would be smoothed. Now, when we have that smooth preview opened up, we can start to refine these shapes a little bit more. Once we're happy with the front view, we're going to go from the side view as well and smooth out the forms as well. You can always scale down the bottom parts of the mesh and the top part to create a more elongated form. Whenever we change the forms of our model, we always want to be working inside of the smooth preview mode, because that's that way we can actually look at how it will affect the final model. We want our final piece to resemble the headphones as much as it can. When we click on smooth preview, we can see that the edges outside of on the perimeter of the cylinder are quite round, but in our reference, those edges are quite sharper. Now, the way to get sharper edges is by actually beveling the edges that we want to stay sharp. Each and every edge that we want to stay as close as it is to without the smooth mesh preview, we always bevel that edge. By beveling the edge, we retain the original shape of the model. Another way to retain the shape of the model is by extruding faces. So whenever we want to, let's say, retain the shape of an edge, we just extrude those faces inwards or outwards. Right now we are just getting the shape of the ear cover, and what we can actually do is extrude it a little bit upwards, and afterwards we can delete those faces and they will automatically retain their shape. If there are no faces that hold the form, it will automatically count as if we have beveled those faces or edges, and it will retain its original shape. So whenever we delete faces, those faces will retain their original shape. Once we have the basic topology setup, we can start playing around with scaling up some of the edges of the model to get those nice curved forms. To get the same shape at the top and the bottom of the headphones, we can just grab the vertices and start moving them up and down. When we are using the smooth preview option, all of the vertices act in a sort of soft mode. They act as if we have soft select enabled, even though we don't. So whenever we move some of the vertices, it will rearrange other shapes of the headphone as well. Now to do the inner part of the model, so the ear muffs, we're going to be creating them from a completely separate mesh. We're going to be using a torus and scaling it to the size of the ear muffs. If we do try to scale it with the scale tool, we can see that it starts to lose form. So whenever you want to scale it, whenever you want to increase or decrease the radius of a torus, always go through the channel box and use the section radius and radius so that you can get your perfect radius for your model. We can always scale by using all three axes, and that won't affect the model at all. As we said before, we always try to keep as low polygon as we can in our without our smooth preview of the mesh, so that we can more easily manipulate our shapes. Same thing as before, if we try to scale any of our faces, we will start to lose out on the form. What we can do is move these vertices or edges and snap them while holding V, so that they don't actually change the form, they don't actually change the radius of the model, and they just change the overall shape. We can also inset the edge on the earpiece a little bit more, so that there are no visible seams or holes in our model, like so. We don't actually need to do any connecting between the two models. We can just leave them as they are without actually connecting them. Most of the models that we do will probably be consisted of different surfaces that are not topologically connected with one another. Once we have the basic shape of the earmuffs and earbuds made, we can start to create the metal cylinders on our headphones. Once we are done with the two first parts, we can start to create the other parts of the headphones. So for now, let's try and create the buttons. The same method as before, we use a cylinder and we added to have 8 subdivisions on the model. The lower polygons we have, the more easier it will be to manipulate those same vertices and create the shape that we want. Right now I'm just rotating and placing it in the correct position so that it gets the nice round forms. I always inset the model that I make into another mesh so that there are no visible seams and holes in our model. The same thing as before, I want to I want to retain the shape of the button a little bit more, so I start beveling the outer edges of the button. Once I have that done, I can copy this model, so the surface that we created for the button, and mirror it to the other side. Now, we can just mirror it to the other side by using Z, and it will look absolutely fine. But because we can see that one button is below the other, I still want both of these buttons to be separate models. So the only thing I do is separate them and I center the pivot on the next one. Be careful, once you do that, all of your transformations will be gone, so you won't be able to use the object orientation on your model. What we can do is open up the pivot menu, click on D, and just replace it and place it in a position that we like. For the head holder, we're going to start and create the metal part first. Same as before, we use 8 subdivision axes and we start to arrange the first vertices and the last vertices of our model. This is the easiest way to go about doing something like this, because afterwards we can just add another edge with multicut, place that edge where we think would be the middle ground basically for that part, and instantly bevel it so that we can get a nice round surface. Now again, we don't need to add that many divisions because we are going to be using this subdivision mode, the preview, the smooth preview, so we don't actually need that many supporting edges. Let's inset these edges a little bit lower so that once again we cannot see the seam. Now I'm going to delete the bottom and the top faces just so that I can retain the shape. I can either delete those faces or I can just bevel the outer edges like so. Both options are fine. Now let's connect the inner part of the ear holder so that we can have that smooth mesh. First of all, what I'm going to do is select one edge loop from inside of the model and delete that. While I'm working on one model, I almost always go to isolate select and work on it alone, and then go out of isolate select so I can see how that would affect the final model. Now I can just bridge all of those faces or extrude them inwards and then just merge all of those to the center. Now if we go to the smooth mesh preview mode, we can see that we have a smooth surface on the inside of our headphones. I'm just moving around some edges so that I can get a nicer form, and also extruding those faces inwards so I can retain the shape a little bit better. For the top part of the headphones, we are going to go again with a torus. We'll just create a torus and use the lowest subdivision that we can, and that's 8. Place it in the middle of our headphones, scale it up, and afterwards just play with the section size and radius size once more. Once we are happy with the position of our mesh, we can always delete the bottom half of the mesh because we don't actually need that. We can also as well delete the left part of the model so that we can only work on one side and mirror it afterwards. By using the smooth mesh preview, we can move around the vertices wherever we want, and it will not disrupt the shape of the model at all. Once we are happy with the position of our vertices, we can start to bevel those edges and get the nice corners that we want. We can always move around some of these edges and get the proper shape of the headphones. Once again, we're going to be doing the same thing over, but with the bottom part of the head holders. For the second part of the head holder, we actually want to delete some of the unwanted faces that we don't need. These faces are the faces that are inside of the first piece that we modeled. These faces we don't need and are just extra geometry that we can use somewhere else. For the bottom part of the second piece of our head holder, we are just going to be merging down the bottom part of our mesh as so. So extruding the edge inwards once and then once more to create that smooth bevel. We can select the vertices in the center and move them aside so that there are no visible seams once again. Afterwards, we do the same thing as previously and we move around some vertices to create that smooth curved surface. Now, when we try to mirror it, we can see that we have not modeled our prop in the middle of the world, but that's fine because that's also a part of today's exercise, and that's mirroring with bounding box or mirroring it manually by setting the pivot in the center of our model, and afterwards just making a copy of that model and scaling it to -1 on the x-axis. To do that, first of all, we have to freeze our transformations and afterwards create a copy and scale it to -1. Once we do that, we can see that the models are transferred to the other side. If you have any problems with mirroring this way, you can always try to delete your history and it will probably solve any issues that may occur. After that, we can group up our headphones and start to texture them. We are not actually going to be texturing them right now, but just assigning some basic colors to match our reference. And that's all for this video.